sometimes worry that I wouldn't be such a feminist if I had bigger tits.
Have you ever watched something, enjoyed it, reflected on it, and generally thought it was a good quality piece of work, but were still bothered because despite it being good, it wasn't this good? That was the impression I was left after watching Fleabag, a black comedy series created by and starring Phoebe Waller-Bridge, which dragged home a metric fuck-ton of acclaim and awards despite only airing for 2 seasons. And for me, it's a show that, while it gets a recommendation for me, I can't help but feel like it took the coward's way out by leaping off a cliff just as it was really hitting its stride. Fleabag is about the titular Fleabag, a young woman and consummate fuck-up who never has to worry about money and runs a failing cafe in London when she isn't partying and sleeping around. And that isn't me passing any sort of judgment on her, that's how she describes what she does and occasionally remarks on not knowing why and what little joy that brings her. The show even goes so far as to raise the interesting conundrum that is women's sexual liberation not providing any sort of added value, meaning, or happiness. But that's pretty much as far as the show takes it, as the running theme of Fleabag is to flesh out thought-provoking questions without daring to provoke any thought or insight by addressing them. Fleabag has an older sister who is a highly successful manic, but the show doesn't really play into the whole tropes of jealousy that one might expect. After their mother dies, recently, their father remarries their godmother, who's a completely narcissistic asshole to such an unbelievable extent that it genuinely felt strange to hate a character being played by Olivia Colman. Much of the first season deals with Fleabag coming to some sort of terms with the death of Boo, her best friend and business partner, who accidentally killed herself after her boyfriend cheated on her with Fleabag. Yeesh. It gets dark, and a more apt description of Season 1 would be to say that it's about demolishing the facade of Fleabag as we know her. The version who frequently breaks the fourth wall to look directly at us turns out to be just as fake as the version she puts out into the world. It's honestly a pretty neat little magic trick, that she hides herself, even from the truest version of herself that we the audience know. And over the course of the season, the show slowly reveals that the truest representation of her is not at all what it appears. Until the season finale, when her sister angrily confesses that she'd been offered a big promotion abroad, but won't take it, partly because she can't abandon her massive fuck-up of a sister.
Yeah, why? You can't! Just fuck off on aeroplanes and leave your weird stepson and broken sister to fend for themselves, okay?
And the true extent of who Fleabag actually is revealed. She may be funny and charming to us, but she is a genuine burden to those around her.
So you're a cool priest, are you?
A cool priest?
Yeah.
No, I'm a big reader with no friends. Are you a cool person?
Oh, I'm a pretty normal person.
A normal person?
Yeah, a normal person.
What makes you a normal person?
Well, I don't believe in God.
I love it when he does that.
Season 2 kicks off with the introduction of the hot priest. I probably should have mentioned this before, but the show really isn't into naming its characters, and as someone who once wrote 2 graphic novels without one, god damn do I respect that. The hot priest is played by Andrew Scott, who is always a joy to watch. He's an actor whose charisma knows no bounds, and his presence always leaps off the screen and grabs your attention. He's the sort of actor that causes me to imagine what a joy it would be to see him play the Doctor, until I remember that that could never happen because it's the current year and he isn't the right demographics. Anyway, Scott plays a younger priest who's just attained his first official gig in the cloth, and who struggles to come to terms with the magnitude of devoting his entire life to God, and possibly also alcoholism. And this only gets compounded when he meets Fleabag and their affection for one another blossoms. By season's end, the two have fallen hopelessly in love with one another, completing one another in ways that neither thought possible. But in the end, God wins, and they must excruciatingly go their separate ways. This story, layered over many of the themes and problems of Season 1, is really when the show finds its stride. Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Andrew Scott have a chemistry that you could just watch for days, but just as quickly as they come together, they fade away, along with the show itself. And this goes back to the biggest problem I have with the show, the propensity to run away rather than risk trying to say anything meaningful. There's a scene early on where Fleabag thinks about the moment she slept with Boo's boyfriend. The camera cuts for a moment before quickly cutting back to reality, where Fleabag says, "Not yet," signifying that this is something she isn't ready to confront. And that theme of using extreme avoidance in the face of confronting issues seems to be like a meta-textual commentary from the show itself. Like it's something that Phoebe Waller-Bridge, the writer, is just as prone to as Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Fleabag. But while the latter can be explained as being fueled by the character, the former can be explained, at least in my opinion, by the pitfalls of postmodern writing. But before I get into why, allow me to first address the monkey in the room. You see, the moment you drop the word postmodern, you can immediately hear loud screeching in the distance from postmodernists. Because postmodernism, which is a skepticism of predominant narratives, is something which postmodernists instantly decry any attempt at defining, which becomes particularly hilarious when most attempts to define it are as a refusal to attempt to define anything. So to you postmodernists, or those of you who are but don't consider yourself one, yet always crawl out of the woodwork to defend it, like you're so postmodern that you're too postmodern to call yourself postmodern, I've read Derrida, Foucault, and Lyotard, so if you have any dreams of hurling accusations at me that I simply don't get what postmodernism is, take that shit down the street to the gullible undergrads whose brains you're intentionally turning into mush. Getting back to Fleabag, she's a selfish asshole with no friends, and the only people in her life are the people who are forced to care for her by blood. And even they repeatedly point out that her lifestyle and choices are an immense burden to them. But the show is the story of someone trying their best, trying to mend those relationships and make up for what she's done and who she is. Only, it's not really. We don't really see any character growth, and the moments when we do are clearly intended to be unusual one-offs that catch people off guard with how out of character they seem. Now, her sister is also an asshole. There's an episode where Fleabag is trying to help her put on this corporate event for work, and for the most part, Fleabag is genuinely trying to help with whatever her sister asks, but her sister is just relentless in berating her no matter what she does. The sisters have some touching moments in the show where they bond, but plenty more where the sister is just being an unforgiving asshole. There's also the time where the sister's husband tries to kiss Fleabag and the sister doesn't believe her. But we later learn that this was just a coping mechanism. That of course she believed her sister, but she was suppressing that in order to keep her home life in order. Now at this point some of you may be saying, wait, this doesn't sound like a problem with characterization at all. In fact, it sounds pretty great. Real people aren't so simple that they can be reduced to something as simplistic as good or bad. People are complex, and writing ones that are neither entirely flawed or entirely virtuous is a sign of good writing. And you would be right. In the world of Fleabag, people can't be reduced this simply. Unless it's Fleabag's stepmother, that woman is a complete bitch. Or her sister's husband, he is such an asshole. See, the whole system breaks down the moment you extend the same courtesy of complexity to any of the characters that we aren't supposed to sympathize with. If Fleabag and her sister are rich, complex, and deserving of our sympathy, why not the others? The answer is because the writer said so. She looks right at us and tells us about this world, so just accept it and don't question it. In fact, looking at the sister and her husband makes for a fascinating insight. The show goes out of its way to illustrate all the ways in which he is such an asshole. I mean, he's a dickhead in public settings, he's clearly an alcoholic, and he even tried making moves on her sister. But the question I had asked the person who recommended the show to me was this: in what way specifically was he worse than her? Really try putting your noodle on that one. She is also an alcoholic.
Thanks for the vote of confidence. Don't get drunk and shit in your sink again.
Are you going to stop bringing that up?
When you do something better.
She also berates people in public. She also sleeps around behind her spouse's back. I'm sorry, how exactly is she obviously the victim in this relationship? The answer to that is, well, because the writer says so. And that's where the postmodern wheels come off. Because people are that simple. Narratives are that simple. Or at least they are when the postmodern writer wants them to be. Other times, you can get away with things like having characters say and do anything for any reason, throw out massive questions about life and the meaning of existence, only to abandon them on the side of the road, collect your rewards, and call it a day. But the truth is, and will always be, that answers aren't as simple as a knowing smirk to the camera.